I am. Hello.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Rosel Medina. I manage programs at Oregon Humanities, and I'm the creator of this program, So Much Together, which celebrates the abundance of imaginative and collaborative work, shaping lives in the land in the Pacific Northwest. I want to thank you all for being here. And I want to hand things over to Crystal very shortly. But I just wanted to, yes, once again, thanks for making time to be here with us today. We are recording this so that we have the presentation and the Q&A section documented for people who might want to access this information later. So thanks for being willing to do that. We'll definitely be sensitive to about how you appear. If you could go ahead and mute yourself for the first part of the workshop while Crystal's presenting her work, I'd appreciate that. I will be here if you want to send me a private message in case you need help with Zoom or anything like that. You can mute yourself down at the bottom. You can stop your video when you feel like it, things like that. There's the chat as well that you can use. I think I'm kind of assuming that a lot of people kind of know how the basics of Zoom right now. But if you need help, please feel free to reach out in the chat. Yeah, and I want to thank my colleagues at Oregon Humanities. Thank you all for making this happen. Thanks to those of us those of you who support our work. We really appreciate it, and we're glad that we get to bring people like Crystal to our programs to share their wonderful work. Crystal is an interdisciplinary artist who activates community art making and collective healing. She's a composer, choral conductor, death doula, and hospice chaplain that practices therapeutic-based healing arts. Her work ranges from youth arts, civic engagement organizing, nonprofit leadership. She's a muralist and a painter, and it ranges also to a singing, hospice, and chaplain. A long, wonderful bio of the amazing work that Crystal does, but I think I'll let her speak for herself. As we navigate this, I'm going to share my screen. And again, thanks for being here. Crystal will present her work. We'll have time for some questions. And then after that, we'll move into some activity and reflection. But now I will hand things over to Crystal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosel. Wow, thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to start just to kind of feel who's in the space. So if everyone could, before we share our slides, can everyone scroll through and just really look into each window and see who's all here if you haven't already? So if you could, yeah, just take that time and wave at each other, smile, see who's here. Yeah. And then I have a few questions before we go to the slides also that gives me kind of a feeling of, yeah, who's here? Who has witnessed a loved one die?
This is Tracy. I have.
Thank you. And who here, who makes art? Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So those are my two questions to start out with. Okay, Rosel, thank you for helping me share my slides today. Let's go ahead and I'll start my presentation.
There we go.
Thank you. So we'll move to the, so actually that video that you saw, it'll make some more sense as I talk about the work. So the video that you saw when you came in was a trip that I just made to the Philippines to visit my family. And when I go visit my family, I visit our family cemeteries. And you could see, what I wanted you to see was the amount of community that was there in the cemeteries. That was for All Saints Day, which is here in America, Halloween. And so I just was sharing some of the traditions that we have. And you can see that there were food vendors, there were carts that had glow sticks that we see at parties. So the way that we grieve and celebrate who we love, I just wanted to bring that diversity as we're talking about this. So that's what those videos were about. Okay, so I want to just take a minute. We'll be in silence as we read through these agreements. We are going to be talking about death. And so things come up like spirituality, faith, religion, people talking about what they think happens after death. And so there's a lot of spaces where folks, they feel triggered. And I encourage everyone to kind of look at these agreements and be conscious of these agreements as we move into this work. And also consent is what we'll do collectively. So if I ask a question, you don't need to answer it. I'm putting it out there. And so don't feel responsibility to do things right. That doesn't exist in this space. So yeah, just these are kind of the agreements that I like to use in my groups. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so I am a death worker, and these are the different ways that I serve community and do death work. So artist, music therapist, I'm a deacon, spiritual director, death doula, hospice chaplain, grief and loss counselor. I did a lot of exploration working for the mortuary, and I love helping people plan. And the only way that you can be a professional planner in a mortuary death corporation setting is to do death sales. I don't do that anymore. I wrote a song about it, why I don't do it, but I do a lot of planning, but I cannot do it in those spaces. I'm an officiant. I love doing that work, and I'm a transporter. So this picture here is a part of the story of why I created the Cemetery Concert Series that I'm going to talk about. So the Last Word Cemetery Concert Series is Oregon's first cemetery concert series. And it's a very unique way of bringing community into the cemetery. So just like the videos I showed you of in the Philippines, we don't have that here. We are, a lot of us grieve in isolation. Some of that has to do with the death corporations and how we're told to grieve. We don't talk about death a lot in community. We're starting to, which is wonderful. But so this, I was transporting, this was a mother, and this was during the pandemic. So the family was not able to have a memorial, and no one could go to the cemeteries. So it was death workers where we were witnessing. Some folks would just drop people off to the groundskeepers, but I made a vow to check in with the families and ask what I could do because they couldn't be there. And so I was this person that was there for them. And I wasn't close with families, every family as a transporter. A lot of times we don't have much to do with the families, except for we pick up their loved ones and take them into our care. So I was in the cemetery this day. It was a 3-hour drive. And I just remember driving in silence and just feeling that grief myself of how folks could not, this person's family could not be with them during their passing, that they couldn't have a memorial, and that they could not be here for these final moments. But for some reason I was. So so this was a very pivotal moment for me of why I wanted to do some of these projects. And so we'll move to the next slide. So I'm going to show you some news clips that talk about the cemetery concert and all the different kind of moving parts and more reasons of why. So Roselle will press play on this news story.
Hyundai Sonata versus Toyota Camry.
To light a unique concert series that aims to help folks who've lost loved ones navigate sorrow through song. More Spencer Thomas is here in studio, and she spoke with the organizer of the event, who says this series will take place in a space that's quite unexpected. Good morning, Spence.
Hey, good morning, Deb. Yeah, you're right about that. So the location is a bit unconventional, but I think that's what I love most about this. So the Last Words Metro Cemetery Concert Series takes place in a series of different Oregon cemeteries, bringing forth a comforting atmosphere for people to gather who have lost loved ones and they're looking for some guidance. I talked with the organizer, who says, quote, "Together we will embrace living and dying through community and song." Take a look.
Dear love, I lay my armor down.
A musical event that rides the rhythm to a different tune in an unlikely place. Cemeteries.
This concert, it's not what people think. We're not all coming to a place where it's just all sad, dark music.
But instead, creating a tuneful environment that opens up conversation about grief and loss.
Let's use art and music to create access to these places that we don't usually want to visit.
For Oregon death doula, hospice chaplain, and organizer Crystal Meneses, this is the heart of the mission.
Throughout the years, I've seen some inequities in how we care for our dying. And I also see the isolation around grief and loss and death and dying. And so this concert is to create community around death.
In partnership with Metro Cemeteries, the Last Words Legacy series will showcase a 10-piece band playing songs written about death, dying, grief, and forgiveness.
We have a variety of music because we want people to feel a variety of feelings, because that's what grief is about. You'll be crying and laughing, you'll have a memory and have feelings of depression, and then you'll have feelings of joy from those memories also. So we want people to feel, all emotions are welcome, but we're going to support each other in it.
I want you to know fear is to courage, as to unknown is to trust.
Everyone that's surrounding this project comes from a place of where they've experienced some type of grief, and they want to bring that to the light.
And the most interesting part?
These songs came from my work as a death doula bedside, but the songs also came from people writing me letters. So they wrote letters to people that have died in their lives. So I got a lot of letters like, "Dear Mom, I hope you're okay. I miss you. Where are you? I love you." And so I took all these letters that community sent to me, and that's where these songs come from.
Transforming loss into a healing experience.
So that's the part about death I think people don't realize. When you really start talking about it, it's so life-giving. It wakes you up in a different way.
Helping people to ease their pain through music while also giving back.
We're recording a live album of the songs, so the audience will be a part of this live album. The album then raises funds for the first death doula care space in Oregon for houseless people. because a lot of the work that I do as a death doula is working with death and poverty, and people that are experiencing poverty don't have the same access as folks with privilege.
And at the end of the day,
the main message is, let's create community around death. Let's talk about death. Let's talk about our lives. Let's practice reaching out to each other. That's what this concert is about.
I love that. So the Cemetery Concert Series is free of charge and will take place across 3 days. Now that's tomorrow, August 27th at Jones Pioneer Cemetery in Portland, August 28th at Lone Fir Cemetery, and August 29th in Troutdale at Douglas Cemetery.
Thank you, Roselle. So that's a lot of the background. And then the next link, I just want to show you. So when people wrote, I asked people to write me letters in all kinds of different ways. And one way was I wanted folks to have an invitation to take a pilgrimage during their grief. I believe in statewide work. So I built these altars that people could travel to, and they're repurposed art. So that's one of them. And what I did is I worked in Lincoln City, and I worked with the city and parks to get these permits to put these art installations there. And so people, yeah, this is one in a park. I love this wooded setting. It's so quiet and peaceful there. So yeah, I carried this altar in the middle of the forest and put it there and invited people to write me letters. And inside of them, they're mailbox altars. So there's that one. And if you scroll down a little bit more, there's one right there. And that one was right on the ocean. Being out in nature is a healing act, a way to digest our pain and our grief. So that's part of this too. Okay, and so if we move to the next slide. So this is, that's my daughter. She's always involved in my projects. Everything that I do involves community and my family. And so so the mailbox altars, like I said, they were repurposed, they were transformed. All the art was also a metaphor for having conversations or metaphors to move to as we're processing death. On purpose, I made these handmade pieces that would they basically they disintegrate, or they decompose. That's the best word. They decompose. So I used a lot of materials that would decompose and put it out in places that got some weather, because I wanted to see also what people's reactions were to decomposition and when something ages and how they interact with it still. So I thought that was interesting too. But and if we moved, so that's just kind of the process. And then if we move to the next slide. So this is one of the altars. So it has a mailbox at the bottom. You would open it up where it says, open your heart. This one was out on the beach too. And I like to have humor. I use humor a lot when I'm doing bedside work. It's a great tool for coping and healing. But there was a movie that had the Zoltar. I don't know if anyone remembers that from the movie. So this one was actually called the Zoltar. And on the back, the instructions were there. There were envelopes and different types of like gel pens. People like those pencils, like so different art materials where people could write letters. And on the back were the prompts were, have you lost someone? Has someone died in your life? And what were your last words with them? And if a lot of folks, when they're talking about grief and loss, is that they feel a lot of regret because they didn't say what they wanted to say. And that's what this project was about too, is that when we're moving through grief, we can process this our entire lives. It's not always, we don't always have just this one moment. And then, so that's what I want folks to know is like when they're feeling regret, that there's different ways to access communicating with the on the scene and the people that we love. Yeah, so here is where I'm going to stop or pause and hear any questions that you may have so far.
Well,
Okay.
I would like to know
Oh,
when the next cemetery concert series will be. Is there going? Do you have another one planned?
Yeah, so we've had 2 so far, and they're the last weekend of August, and it's a partnership with Metro Cemeteries, which I love. I love working with Metro. The first cemetery concert series, we did 4 cemeteries, and then last summer we noticed that the Lone Fir Cemetery is very popular in Portland, so we just made both concerts there. And then this year, yeah, I will probably stay at Lone Fir until the series grows a little bit more, but there's a lot of beautiful cemeteries where we can have a lot of community, but they're a little bit farther out. But so yeah, the last weekend in August. And so last summer, I mean, the dream is to have people write songs in community and come up and sing. Like the band was just to show people this is what this could be. And then, having people write their own songs and join us. So last summer we had the Dougie Center come and we had youth sing. We had My Voice Music, who their executive director, he died. And we wanted to find a way to honor Ian and his amazing work and for the youth that he served and what was so beautiful was he taught them to use music to move through their life, and they used music to honor him and move through their grief. So My Voice Music, I really highly suggest you check them out. But so that's the thing is, as it grows, more and more community will hopefully be around it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you open to like reading a poem or something like that, like something that might be not exactly music but still related?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this year we also had dancers. I want to bring in an aerial artist. I mean, let's do it. Yeah. There's all kinds of different ways that we express ourselves. And yeah, the more that we can show that. So, and at the end of the presentation, I put my phone number at very large because I'm someone that please do call me and I will pick up, and I want to include everybody. So my culture in the Philippines, we have a word, it's kapwa, and it means self and the other. And so now that letter, by reading it and witnessing it and responding to it, it's a part of us now. It's changed us. And so that self and the other, I feel that so much when we do this work in each other, but also thinking about our art, self and the other in our artwork, with plants and water. I mean, everything. And just always bringing it back to how connected we are. So that's kind of what surfaced for me. And it's always that connection. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the slides. And so that process that you just went through, there's so many ways of creating art, and we only have a little bit of time. But so with doing what you just did, I wrote songs, and I want to. So this next song that I'm going to play for you is from the Cemetery Show. It's called Changed, and I'm only going to play a minute of it, maybe. But the backstory of this was when I'm sitting with folks, and there's a lot of conversations in isolation around grief and not doing it right. And I found this story of a mother who her child died, and she went to counseling, and her counselor said, I want you to draw yourself. So she drew a black circle, and that black circle was her, and that was grief. So her identity was grief. And then as time moved, and yeah, really working on connecting with people, finding strengths in how she copes just with time. Her counselor asked, I'd like you to draw yourself again. And she drew herself as the black circle, but then there were all these circles around it. And that's how I really encourage people to move through their grief and talk about it, is that we're changed and we're growing from that love of the person that we lost. And there's a lot to say about that, but that's what this song is about. So we'll just play maybe I don't know, a minute and a half of it. Thank you, Roselle. So yeah, and if you listen to that song more, it just kind of sings through that different process of growth and change and love. Okay, so we're gonna move to the next slide. Oh, and I guess one thing to say about the beginning of that song is I see a lot of suffering because folks sometimes believe if they heal or they move through that grief, that they're losing that person even more. So I hear that a lot. Yeah, this is a time where we have any questions or reflection. And if we don't, I can actually give another prompt. But I love the time that we get to connect and share. That's why this work is so powerful. But are there any questions or reflections about anything that you experienced today, or even what you're bringing here today, or why you came here? Yeah, Nancy.
I just wanted to comment on something that Lauren just said about the sort of the connection, the gratitude, I think was the way I was reading it, the gratitude for the gifts that we have, and how much of an important part of that it must be, even the gratitude of the capacity to love, because that capacity is also tied in with the capacity to feel the loss. So it was a good reflection. Thank you, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share that I don't believe in signs from the unseen after, but I do think that memories are a very powerful thing, and that the essence of people stay with us through those memories. And one thing that we were talking in our breakout group was like this feeling, somebody was sharing this feeling of when sometimes it's more like it had felt that the love of people, it's a little bit more inaccessible while they are on earth, and then when they pass and it's kind of like the essence of the person stays, and then that people have felt more, or this person was feeling more the presence of, and the essence and the love through things that she was living in a daily, or like in life, in nature, and feeling that love of that person, that loved one. And so I do think that memories are such a powerful thing that connect us with that soul and with that essence of each other. And then I was thinking that if I was to leave a sign or signs to people, I always think that like leaving recordings, you know, if you just leave recordings for people who are going to stay after you pass, I think that that's a very sweet thing to like help people in their grief, but also just to like be that voice after you're gone, and kind of just keep that connection in that way.
Mm-hmm. I love how you brought all of that present. And I don't know if anyone's been to a death cafe, but I invite you to go to a death cafe, because conversations like this are seated there. So I heard so many questions that I could ask next, which would be, what is your legacy? How do you want your legacy to be shared? How are you sharing your legacy now? I even heard things about possible cellular memory, how we're connected to ancestors. There's all of these conversations that death guide us into living our lives now. And so thank you for sharing. Anything else that is surfacing for anyone? Oh yeah, okay. Heather, I see Heather.
Hi. Hi. I wanted to thank Juliana for sharing that perspective, actually, because my question was going to be, since signs and symbols are so inherent to the way I just navigate life in general and for my family, I realized that there is actually like a lot of people that don't necessarily believe in signs, or, you know, so what ways, I'm curious what other ways, like Juliana was saying, memories, but I'm super curious to hear other people's, or if there's, you know, how do you make that bridge between when symbols and signs are so normal for you, like other ways, like what are the other ways that people can, and I've seen a documentary with this family. It was really sad because they felt like they should be getting signs from their child that passed, but they weren't. And like, what are other ways to maybe navigate, or what other tools are there to help people feel that connection or be able to move through the grief, you know, besides the signs and symbols, because that's easy for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, does anyone have something they can share there?
I just want to say, I feel like a memory of someone is a sign. Like it's a visitation from the person. It's coming to you. So for me, that just doesn't seem that far off. It's a memory of something. You're thinking of something unseen, and so yeah. I guess, you know, however you interpret it, it's still a connection with someone who's gone.
Yeah, I sometimes, you know, I come from a large Navajo family, and so a lot of cooking and gathering. I grew up, you know, on the reservation, and there's a lot of family gatherings, and that's how I learned how to cook. And that's how I learned how to make bread. My uncle passed away, and we had lots of people come and visit. Lots of people just came to visit, and we had to make a lot of fry bread and lots of yeast bread and tortillas, and just fed a lot of people. And I sat with, you know, one of my grandmother's sister all that weekend, and I learned how to cook. And to this day, I use that interpersonal power of learning how to cook for people. And it shows when you make food with love, and people ask, you know, where'd you get your recipe, or how did you do that? And you really get to feel the love in your stomach, in your soul, and their faces and the smiles, and community starts coming over to you and asking you for your recipe. Then you start sharing it, and it just becomes, food is a very powerful tool to use when grieving with healing and bringing community in, especially when it comes with love, because that's how I grew up, is with that, a lot of that, just that love, and food really helps.
Absolutely. Yeah, end of life, a lot of folks that I'm with bedside, they will talk about food. And that I think that encourages us to think about pleasure, and if you're an activist, like pleasure activism, we're talking a lot about in our communities. But yeah, embrace your bodies and pleasure and food, and smell beautiful flowers, like, feel the wetness on your skin when you're jumping in the ocean, whatever it is. But a lot of folks, they talk about food. I just have all these memories of people telling me how they made things, how their grandma made things, and then how I should try it. Yeah. So yes, food in so many ways. Lisa, I see Lisa's hand up.
Yeah, in our family too, just to echo what you were saying, Lauren, that for us in our family, there are certain recipes that we make that are kind of like family favorites, I guess might be one way to say that. Or if, my kid's going through a hard time, I might make one of the recipes that maybe it's a little more labor intensive, but it's sort of like an act of love. It's a way to say I love you. And then I started thinking there's other tradition things that our family shares. And we've passed these things down from generation to generation, like, holiday traditions like Christmas ornaments for the tree, or we've done the luminarias. And that doesn't necessarily get passed down, but the tradition continues. And we have this whole little language of things that we say in our family. Like we have the saying, which is, I love you more than 4 orange hedgehogs in a field of daisies, because 4 is my favorite number, orange is my favorite color, hedgehogs are my favorite animal, daisies my favorite flower. So we say that. And then we also have this whole little ridiculous story about things that drive me crazy. Like, there's a certain kind of car that every time I see it, it gives me a headache. And I don't like eating at restaurants where the forks tines are all kind of jaggedy and they're not even. And so my family made up this ridiculous little scenario about this car being driven by some animal that drives me crazy, and it's eating with one of those forks, and just this whole image is just enough to drive mom crazy. And it's just, we did that when I was growing up with my brother, and I don't know how my kids figure that out, but just silly stuff that we have just sort of incorporated into our lives.
I love it. Thank you. I think there's a great way to, our time, Roselle, I need to close it up, right?
Well, yeah, I want you to close it up after I do my practice closing it up, my little pre-closing it up.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. So, but I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. And it's what you just said is so much encouragement of practicing connecting, and living each other's lives, and ways to always look out for each other in all our forms. I love it. Okay, Roselle.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Crystal. Thanks so much for sharing your work with us today. I'm going to hand things back to Crystal after I talk for just a minute, because I want hers to be the voice that echoes in your ear after this workshop. I just want to say thanks again for coming to this So Much Together workshop with Crystal Meneses. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for being here. We have other So Much Together workshops coming up all throughout the winter and spring. Our next one that's scheduled is on March 22nd with 2 young climate activists, Danny Cage and Ada Crandall. That'll also be online March 22nd. you'll all get an email with some information about upcoming workshops and things like that. I'll also send you a link to the recording of this workshop in case you'd like to access that. One really important thing on my end is that I love to hear how this goes for you. So I'm going to put a little form a link to a form in the chat. And if you could just open that up really quickly, have that on your desktop so that you can take a couple minutes to fill that out, I would really appreciate that. It's really important to me to hear how these things go for you. Speaking of that, I do manage programs at Oregon Humanities, and I love to hear what your ideas for our programs. So I'm also going to put my email in case you'd like to be in touch with me. So I'll put some important links in the chat. I'll also put that information in an email that will go out to you afterwards. So please look for that. I'd love to hear back from you on that form to hear how this went for you. And I'd also love to hear from you if you have any ideas, questions, comments about our programming in general. So I want to hand things back to Crystal. Thank you all again for coming, and take it away, Crystal. Thank you.
Thank you, Roselle. You're awesome. I just want to say thank you for everyone that came today. I really am grateful to share space with you. I'm just going to end with, when I'm done, I'll have Roselle share the rest of the slides. And I have my phone number at the end. And I really believe in relationships. So if you ever want to call, have a conversation, set up a Zoom, if we're near each other, have a cup of tea. But I encourage you to come to more spaces like this. Like the very last part of this was so special because we got to hear each other. And yeah, I'm just encouraging you to talk more about death because it changes how we live our lives and how we can connect. So thank you so much for being here. And Roselle will share those posts with my number, and please do reach out. I'd love to know you. So thank you.